So the sum of these two are 155,702. That's the actual revenue from grain. That was the value of the grain that you produced during the year. Market livestock. We need our inventory adjustment. We know that we have more than one, so we have to do an equal sum. And it's going to work the same way, the ending minus the beginning. So over here, the ending, close parentheses, and then up here you can see your formula. And so a more straightforward thing to do right now is to do a minus sum, opening parentheses, and then highlight your beginning range, close parentheses. So now up here you can see we've got ending minus beginning, and then if you hit enter, it gives you the full accrual adjustment. The next one is change in value due to change in quantity of raised breeding livestock. This is our raised breeding livestock, so let's go over to the balance sheet and just check it out. Here, our raised breeding livestock was $10,000 at the beginning and $12,500 at the ending. We know that we used a base value of the same amount for both of these, so the only way that they went up is because, and let's see, ignore error. If you get those, sometimes Excel tries to find places where you might have made a mistake and it tries to outthink you, and sometimes that's really helpful and sometimes it's not. In this case it wasn't. So we had $10,000 at the beginning, $12,500 at the end. It's valued at the base value, so the only way that it went up is because we had more numbers. So it was the change in the quantity. So over here it says change in the value due to change in the quantity of raised breeding livestock. So the way we get that is a plus or equals to tell it's its formula. The balance sheet is the ending minus the beginning, and it went up by 2,500, so that's what this should show. It went up by 2,500. Change in accounts receivable, the same way, the ending minus the beginning. So ending minus beginning. And now you've got all your revenue done, so we want to sum it up. Home, sum, and then just highlight the revenue, or the range. So there's your gross revenue. We also want to take the value of farm production is these two. Here you want to get your pointer, when it gets to the corner, it makes a diagonal line with arrows at each end, and then that lets you drag it up. Once we have this the purchases of feed and livestock, we can say plus our gross revenue minus those two equals our value of farm production. And when I cleared everything out, I left these lines in here that yours I don't think has the lines in there. So the way that you get them, let me just get rid of some of these lines and then show you how to get them in. No border. So yours may look like this, and it doesn't look quite as clean. In this case, I wanted a line underneath those two, so I highlight that area. I click here and then just click bottom border. And then my 296,175, I wanted a double line on the bottom, so I just click double line on the bottom, and that's how you get them in. All right, now we're down to the expenses. We have all of our cash expenses here, and now we've got to do these accrual adjustments. Change in prepaid expenses. Here it's a little bit different because we're adjusting an asset in the expense section. So we actually have to flip the sign or do beginning minus ending instead of ending minus beginning. Let's just go check it out a little bit first. So here we have prepaid expenses. This isn't a good one to show because it's exactly the same. So I'm just going to do it and then we'll think through. Plus balance sheet, beginning minus ending. Now let's think about it for supplies. Over here on the balance sheet, so supplies were $1,850 at the first and $975 at the end. So we used whatever we bought plus an additional around $900 out of inventory. So we used more expenses than what we purchased. So this should be positive to increase those expenses. And so it should be the $1,850 minus the $975. So beginning minus ending. Current assets are always going to be adjusted the same in the expense section. All current assets, all current liabilities will have the same adjustment in the expense section. All current assets in the revenue section will be adjusted the same. So in a certain section, if you figure it out for one, you know it works for the others. And so beginning minus ending, beginning minus ending. And this cash invested in growing crops should be the same way. So it's beginning minus ending. And this actually went up. And so it's a negative amount here, meaning part of these expenses went into something that's going to be used next year, and so we want to decrease them. Then change in accounts payable is going to be off of the balance sheet, off of the current liabilities. So we come down to the current liabilities section. Accounts payable were 0 and now they're at $6,578. So in addition to what we paid for, we also used another $6,500 worth of expenses, and so we want to show a positive $6,578. So it's the ending minus the beginning. So this is going to cause our total expenses to be $6,578 higher. Change in accrued taxes. Balance sheet here. Accrued tax was $560, it went to $568. It's bigger now, so we've actually used more than we've paid for. And I just put an equal sign there instead of a minus, so just backspace, minus, and then do the first one, the $560. So now that's all your accrual adjustments here for the operating expenses other than depreciation. So depreciation, let's go back to this little table that we filled out over here to the side. So we have a place for the book value on sales, but in this case there wasn't any sales, and so these are just zeros. And raised breeding livestock is just at its base value, so it doesn't depreciate. Land doesn't depreciate, and that's why we've only got yellow and we're doing depreciation for these other assets. So the formula is what we start out with plus purchases minus our sales minus the ending amount should be equal to depreciation. Once I've done it for one of these, just copy it down. If you want to be careful, then you can double click it, make sure it's referring to the right cells, hit escape or enter to go back. And then my depreciation is the sum of those things. I don't need this sum here because I could sum it over on the income statement, but I think sometimes it's nice to sum it here just so that you see what it is. And if you want to, you could even do something like that. So coming back over here to the income statement, we figured it out over there, so we just say plus our depreciation here and enter. So here it's really just a formula. There's nothing that I need to do on the income statement. The reason I left it in blue is because sometimes because it's off to the side there on the balance sheet, it might be easy a year or so later to leave some other information in there or forget that it's doing something over here. And so this is some place that I could put a note here. This comes from table to side of non-current assets on balance sheet. And so there, I just kind of know where this comes from. Sometimes my notes, if I want them to stand out, I can do them in red. By having that note over there, when I print out my income statement, when I print the income statements, what I do is I highlight the areas that I want to print. In that case, this would be this area. Page laid out, print area, set print area. So it's only going to print what's inside that area. So all my little notes out here are here to help me build the file, but they don't really do anything when I print it out. So over here, I want my sum of all those operating expenses, home, sum, and then just highlight the whole range. Hit enter. So now we've got our operating expenses. So now we need to do our interest, change in accrued interest. Our interest, we paid $33,000 here. Over on the balance sheet, accrued interest is a current liability. right, where is it? Accrued interest right here. It was $18,000. It went to $14,107. So we know that it went down. So what we paid was actually partly paying off what we had owed at the beginning of the year. So we really need to have a negative adjustment here. So we do the ending minus the beginning. And that's just the same thing that we used for accounts payable and accrued tax, because it's a current liability in an expense. And then my total interest expense here is the sum of those two. And just highlight my range, hit enter. And then my total farm expense is going to be my operating expenses plus my interest expense. In this case, it's $243,270. My net farm income from operations is going to be the value of farm production up here, because that was the net of all the revenue, minus my total farm expense. So revenue minus expenses gives me my net income. This is net income from operations, so this is what I made from operating the business, $52,905. In addition, I could have made money from selling my assets, which I have zeros there, but I want to fill those in. So net farm income before taxes. So my machinery, I can have a sum of these two. Oh, there we go. And then plus my net farm income from operations, plus my gain or loss. If it's a loss, it's going to be in here as a negative number, so I just add that to it. So that's my net income before taxes. Off-farm income before taxes is going to be the net income, farm income before taxes, plus the off-farm income. So we've left the farm stuff completely standalone, but if you need to show your personal income in here for financial statements that you take to the bank or something to secure financing, down here it can show that you have additional income right there, but it keeps it separate from looking at just what the farm's doing. Here's our taxes. There's two tax amounts here, the farm and the personal. So our change in income tax payable is from the balance sheet. And we come over here to the balance sheet. And income tax payable, it went up, so we actually used more than we paid. So it's the ending minus the beginning. And then my change in current portion deferred taxes, this is the change in what I've deferred to the future. So we come over here. It was at $63,000, now it's at $75,000, so this has gone up too. So the taxes that I would owe on what I produced was higher than what I paid. So I do that. All of these together are my taxes, and so it's $21,000. So my total income tax, oh, I put that up a line. If you did that, just Control X or cut it and then paste it. You could delete it and redo it too. And then my net income is going to be my income before taxes minus my income tax expense. So there you have it. You've completed your income statement. Now you've only got the statement of owner's equity and statement of cash flows, and you'll do those in the next module.